The difference between the rich people and people in the job phase is that the rich don't stay in the job phase for very long.
I know it is a blessing. Yeah. Lift up my eyes to the hills, I'm blessed, oh man.
Hey guys, Chris Francis here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about 4 lessons about money that changed my life. When I was a kid in Jamaica, my mom had given me this book titled Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I know some people probably find him somewhat controversial as of late, but nonetheless, I think his book has a lot of important information and a lot of thoughts that we should try to adopt into our lives, some of which I have obviously adopted today and I want to share with you. Number 1, most of us work for money while the rich have their money work for them. If you talk to anyone about making money, a lot of the times the conversation goes into you have to get a job to make money. No, that is not wrong, but obviously that's just the first step. A job is the way for you to get basic income. And so without certain skill sets, certain assets, you kind of need a job to produce cash flow. The difference between the rich people and people in the job phase is that the rich don't stay in the job phase for very long. And that's what this lesson is trying to have you do, is think about the job phase, how long you want to stay in there, and how you can also get out of the job phase. And what the rich learn to do is they leverage resources and people to make their money work for them. This kind of sounds like you need to be a business owner, but that it's not necessarily the case. Even if you don't leverage people, for example, you can leverage certain skill sets, certain assets to produce cash flow. Basically, you want to learn how to exchange more than your labor for a wage from your employer. Number 2, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you save. And I think this is extremely important because a lot of times people really try to say, oh, I make X and X, this and that, but how much do you really save? So the difference between the people who are rich and some of us others is that the rich put an emphasis on saving money. So for example, most of us, we kind of spend on various things and then we save after. What the rich do is they actually kind of pay themselves first and they save first. And a lot of them actually have automated saving, which is very important. We will talk about that in another video down the line about automating your savings. But just so you know, you want to pay yourself first and automate your savings. Let's just put this into some perspective. If you make $5K a month, for example, after your expenses and such, you save about $250. You're probably saving about 5% of your income. If you go online, most financial planners will probably tell you want to save about 10%. So right there's a difference in what people recommend you should save for retirement versus what you're actually saving. No, there's nothing wrong with saving 5%. Obviously, you want to save with what you're able to and comfortable with. Consistency is the most important thing. But I think the key about this lesson is that if you can either increase your income or minimize your expenses, you kind of want to hit that sweet spot of getting that 10% in savings, because that's essentially what's going to help you save for retirement. Okay, number 3, acquire assets, not liabilities that you think are assets. And so let me break this down a little bit and just start by defining an asset and what is a liability. So an asset is essentially anything of value that can be converted to cash, and a liability is essentially anything you owe someone. And examples of assets or typical assets are stocks, real estate, art, golf, for example. Typical liabilities are your student loans, credit card debt, auto loans, such and so forth. And so what this lesson is kind of harping on is that we kind of embrace the consumer mindset and we invest in personal possessions that we think are assets. But there are actually just a few of us rich people, more so, who kind of spend their life acquiring assets and more so income generating assets. And this is kind of particular because you want to do this because you want income generating assets, and these are essentially assets that produce you some level of cash flow. And so let me talk about an asset that, for example, kind of is controversial but doesn't really produce a cash flow steadily like I mentioned. And the best example is your house, obviously. So if you buy a house for your family or your significant other and you live in it, there are several costs associated with obviously buying the house And then second to that is maintain the house from a month-to-month standpoint. No, as I mentioned, an income generating asset that does not produce you steadily cash flow. Your house isn't really an investment until you sell it after several years and you convert that to cash. And so while you're living in it, your house isn't really an income generating asset. Other non-income generating assets are cars, recreation equipment, furniture, etc. They kind of all feel good to own, but they don't really generate any income like I mentioned. What the rich people do, however, is they acquire stocks, they acquire bonds, actually like income generating real estate. So for example, you may own another home that you rent out. And of course, a lot of them have side businesses. And what these all have in common is they generate steady cash flow. So the last one, number 4, working all your life for someone else can lead to financial struggle. So remember at the beginning of this video, I talked about the job phase. And like I said, it's prompting you to think about how long you want to stay in that phase. You're constantly trading your time for money. Since you only have so much time to give to your employer, it creates a limit on how much you can earn. For example, let me put this into, again, just talking about numbers. In your current job, say you make about 60K, and the cap on that job is 80 grand. Once you get to that 80 grand, no matter how good you are at your job, how well you're exceeding expectations, your employer isn't gonna pay you more than 80K. And one may say, oh, I'll just get another job then. Okay, you get to another job, you're getting your 80K, you maybe get a raise, you're at 85. The cap on that is 100K. Again, once you get to that point, you meet expectations, you do your best work, your employer will not pay you more than that. And really, that is actually true. Like, I don't know if people know this, but your salary is based off a market reference point. Employers call it MRP, and you get a certain percentage above or below that, and then they only can go so far above 100% of the MRP. And at that point, again, you just don't get paid anymore. And by contrast, if you make the decision to, for example, sell your skills, the same skills that I mentioned about leveraging in the beginning, if you sell these skills outside of your work hours, you can make additional income. So say you leverage your skills for about 30 bucks an hour, and say you leverage your skills 5 hours outside of work a week. You make, what is that, $150 just a week. And for calculation's sake, let's say you do this 50 weeks of the year. 50 times 150, I think, is 7,500. So just by leveraging your skills on the side, you've generated an extra source of income that gives you $7,500. And what you realize is there's no cap on that, because you can either work more hours for yourself, or you can improve your skills to improve that hourly rate. So that can go up to 50, 80, and you essentially get to leverage yourself in a more effective way that gives you an additional source of income. That's the main point of this. So let's summarize. 1, a lot of us work for money while the rich have money work for them. 2, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. 3, acquire assets and not liabilities that you think are assets. And 4, working all your life for someone else can lead to financial struggle. Now, these lessons aren't meant to make your situation feel hopeless. I really want to give you insight in how the rich think about money versus about probably how many of us think about money. And the point is, if you want to improve your financial situation, you really have to make certain changes that are meaningful in the way that you see and think about money in order to improve your financial situation. So guys, if you found any value in the content that I shared today, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video.